Okay, so do we have any questions, comments?
Bhante, I have a question.
Yeah.
My question is about why the Buddha set up the Sangha ask people to renunciate rather than to establish a Sangha that's for lay people. If sexual desire is an integrated part
If what?
Sexual desire is an integrated part in this sense sphere world, and it's such a big part. And if there's, as I said, if there's no, because the Buddha knows the gratification, so he knows the danger, so he knows the disenchantment. So if someone tries to avoid this part, then is it possible to achieve, I mean, unless that practitioner is always in the samadhi. Otherwise, why maybe there are two questions. Why did the Buddha did not establish a Sangha that's for not just monastics, it's for lay people too. And for those monastics, they do not, they just exclude the essential part of the sensual sphere existence. Will they be able to achieve? What's the percentage? I remember when we were having Dhammapada, Bhante gave us a story. There's a monk, an old lay person was offering him everything, but one day he was about to be out of town. So that old lay person told the monk that from tomorrow on, my daughter will give you the offer of the meals. And then that monk fell in love with the daughter and say if he cannot get married to the daughter, he would on strike, not eating and until he died, right? And so he got married to the daughter, and then they gave birth to a son, and then the wife always teases her husband, saying, telling her child, say, okay, this is your father used to be a monk, and because he could not resist desire, so he became your father. And then that father afterward became a monk again, and he achieved arahantship. So my question is, because the Buddha also had a household life, and from this story, and also there are so many scandals nowadays. So what's the reason why the Buddha didn't set up a Sangha for lay people and just for monastics? That's the first question. And the second question, for Sangha of monastics, is it possible to
gain liberation?
Right.
Without having fully indulged in the pleasures of the senses?
No, not fully indulged, just to exclude this part. Okay,
the Buddha didn't set up a formal order for lay people, a Sangha in that sense, but certainly in the Buddha's time, in the various villages and towns that he visited, there were lay people who became his disciples, and I believe they would have formed together into communities who would be practicing together. The Buddha wouldn't have formulated detailed codes of conduct for them apart from the basic 5 precepts for constant observance, and then he enjoins the lay people on the Uposatha days, that's the full moon and new moon observance days, to undertake the 8 precepts, which is in a way emulating the conduct of a novice monk, and also gave various instructions on how they should observe the Uposatha days by for example, in Anguttara Nikaya, I think we took that sutta already, Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Threes, number 70, a discourse given to Visakha, that female disciple, Visakha, lay disciple, to observe the Uposatha days by taking the 3 refuges, the 8 precepts, and then practicing the 6 recollections, the recollections of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the recollection of generosity, of virtuous conduct. Actually, the sutta mentions those 5 recollections. And then there's the Sigalovada Sutta. This is Tiki-nipata Sutta number 31, where the Buddha gave a lot of advice intended for lay people concerning like family relationships, parents relating to children, children to parents, teachers to students, students to teachers, employer to employees. You know, they're not, he doesn't lay down fixed rules the way he does for the monastic order, because he can't prescribe fixed rules for lay people living in society. But he gives many pieces of advice, principles of good conduct. And so one could imagine that in these towns and villages spread out in India, in northeast India, there would have been monasteries where the monks lived, and then the lay people would regularly go to those monasteries and function together, something like a community centered around those temples and monasteries. Okay, so that is the first answer to the first question. The second question, first, the story that you related, actually, that person didn't become a Buddhist monk at first. This was the ascetic that the Buddha encountered right after his enlightenment, when he was walking from Bodh Gaya to Isipatana in order to give his first formal teaching to the group of 5 monks. While he was walking on that road connecting the 2 places, he met a wandering ascetic who was impressed by the Buddha's demeanor, and then he asked them, "Who is your teacher and what teaching do you follow?" Then the Buddha said, "I have no teacher. I am the enlightened one in the world. I'm going now to Benares to set in motion the wheel of Dharma." And then that ascetic shook his head and said, "Maybe so," and then he went his own way. And then he was living on his own, and he was being supported by a hunter. And then one day when the hunter was going away on a hunting expedition, he asked his daughter to provide the meal to the hunter. He asked his daughter to provide the meal to that ascetic. And then when the ascetic came to the house, he saw the daughter, and the daughter was very beautiful. And so he fell in love with her, and then he went back to his hut and lay down on the bed and made the vow, "I won't get up again until I have to have," I don't remember her name, "I have to have so-and-so, otherwise I won't eat again." And then when the hunter came back, then the ascetic told the hunter that he wanted to his daughter, and so then they arranged the marriage, and then everything else happened, until finally now the ascetic is married, and after they have a child, then the wife teases her husband and says, "You used to be an ascetic, but now you're carrying the bundles of meat to the market." So she kept on teasing him in that way. And then finally he couldn't take it anymore, and he left the house and went running to seek, "Where is the great ascetic that I met between Gaya and Benares. And then he met the Buddha, and then became a monk under the Buddha, then achieved Arhat. I think he actually achieved Anagami, the state of Anagami. He passed away as an Anagami. Okay, so, but now what is the question? Okay.
A higher probability that one can achieve the final goal when one first become a household holder and have a family life, then those people who renunciate from the very beginning. Is there a
better chance?
Yeah.
I think that there's no fixed law about this. It depends so much on a person's character. I mean, let's face the fact that, say, in a typical Buddhist country, like let's take Sri Lanka, where it's the custom for parents to donate, quote, donate one of their sons to the monastery to become a monk. Usually when the boy is 12 years old to 16 years old, so still young, they haven't really experienced life yet, they don't know what life is about. Or sometimes the child on his own wants to become a monk because he has romantic ideas about monastic life. Okay, but what happens in the 90% of the cases, or at least 80% of the cases, once they reach some degree of maturity, in their 20s, they'll decide that they don't want to continue with the monastic life and give up and go back to the household life. I don't know many cases of those who go back to the household life, experience its pleasures and enjoyments, and then decide, this is real. Well, actually, I've heard of a lot who say, this is really dukkha. But very few who then give that up and then go back into the monastic life. What they do is they say, this is really dukkha. In my next life, I will renounce and I won't become a householder again. But it could well be the case that if somebody becomes a monastic early in life and they haven't enjoyed the pleasures, particularly the sexual pleasures, and then that thought is always weighing on their mind and obstructing their ability to practice, and probably for them it's better to renounce the renunciate life and go back and become a householder and then enjoy the sensual pleasures and lead a good life as a good Buddhist lay follower in the household life. And then maybe if their faculty is mature enough, then they can practice diligently as a householder and make better progress than they would if they continue as a monk thinking, oh, I wish that I had enjoyed sensual pleasures, I wish I could enjoy sensual pleasures, but I don't want to disappoint my parents or my teacher, and I'll be embarrassed in front of my fellow monks. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Bhante, is it fair to say to become a Buddha, one needs to have a household, family life first, but if one just want to be a practitioner on the path to liberation, then that part is not necessary?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a fixed principle that one who is going to become a Buddha has to go through, in his final existence, to go through the stage of being a householder. Because I believe that's the case, I can't say for sure. Because in this way, the Buddha then sets himself up as a model of one who has enjoyed and experienced and enjoyed the household life and has renounced it on the basis of direct personal experience. Whereas many of the Buddha's disciples, the prominent disciples, went forth as youths without ever entering upon married life or conjugal life. Like, so far as I could see, Sariputta, Moggallana, the two foremost disciples, they were coming from the Brahmin families. So as young Brahmins, they went forth directly into well, first they became wandering ascetics without fixed allegiance. Then when they met the Buddha, then they became monastic disciples of the Buddha. Mahakassapa, interestingly enough, he was inclined, even from his childhood, to the life of renunciation, but he also came from a Brahmin family, and so his parents, a wealthy Brahmin family, so his parents forced him to marry, and so he became married to a woman by the name of Buddha Kapilani, but she also, from her childhood, had the strong inclination to the renunciant life. And so the two of them never consummated their marriage, but they lived together like brother and sister until, I don't know, maybe shortly after the marriage. I think that they had to wait until their parents passed away, and then they could go forth and become monastics. Okay, so any other questions? Yeah, take the microphone. Yeah.
I have been told that very often, at least in Sri Lanka too, they encourage people to be monks when they're younger.
Yeah.
Not as an old age sort of home or whatever. I mean, if people have been monks, they can go old age home for monks, that's different. But it's not like just a place that when you're disabled and unable to do anything else, that you become a monk.
Yeah, certainly.
The whole purpose is not that.
Yeah.
The whole purpose is to have the energy to try to attain enlightenment. Yeah. So therefore, I tend to agree. Now, I'm old. Yeah. Maybe I'm too old to be a monk, you know.
Never too old.
No, but this is true, Bhante, because even when you're meditating, it's a very important part of the practice. It's much better because you must have a certain amount of energy and effort. Yeah. It's not just to sit there and wait for half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Yeah. But you have to be able to focus. Yeah. And for that, you need a lot of energy. So the sooner one becomes a monk, the better it is for their practice, I believe, you know.
In a way, but let me say that I think one of the reasons why the custom of ordaining young boys developed within not only Sri Lanka, probably Thailand, Myanmar has that tradition, probably goes back to ancient India as well, because it might stem from even from the period when the teachings were being transmitted orally through oral, memorization and transmission, because a young person can memorize. The mind is much fresher, sharper, clearer than that of an older person. So they can memorize the teachings and then store them up in the memory, retain them in memory, and then when they reach maturity, then be able to teach them to other youngsters. So this is the custom amongst the Brahmins, the way the Brahmins have been able to preserve the Vedic literature flawlessly through the centuries. Yeah, but what happens, too often nowadays in the Buddhist countries, at least I could witness this in Sri Lanka, that the young people, the people who are ordained as boys, when they become monks as boys, then, as I said, when they get to be early 20s or so, then they feel that they don't want to continue with the monastic life, and then they will leave the room. So probably it's best to become a monk when one is young, but for parents to donate a child to the monastery, maybe it's not so appropriate, because maybe it's not the child that really has an inner determination to lead the monastic life. So let the young people, when they're late teens, they still have a lot of energy. So maybe from the age of 16 on, let them decide that on their own, not through pressure from the parents. Okay, Sandy.
Bhante, are gratification, danger, and escape, these three things happen in all the worlds? Are there any other worlds that there's only gratification and no danger?
You mean any other realm of existence?
Yeah. Or world.
Okay. Well, when the sutta speaks about the world,
This world.
it's speaking about the world in its entirety. But if you mean different realms of existence, okay, it's said that in the heavenly realms, there is unvarying, unaltered pleasure and enjoyment continues all the ways close to the end of a lifespan. But as the lifespan is coming to an end, then when the devas, when they see the signs that they're going to perish, then they become full of alarm and anxiety. And so there's suffering there as well. And even in the Brahma worlds, which is supposed to be extremely calm and blissful and peaceful, and the lifespan continues for aeons upon aeons, but eventually life in those realms comes to an end as well. So there's impermanence in every realm. Maybe not intense physical suffering, but there is impermanence. Every realm is impermanent. So there's that danger is there in every realm.
Bhante,
Yeah. It seems that the battery is either weak or...
battery, so
Okay.
escape is not in every realm. Like hell?
Oh, yeah, no. There's no possibility of liberation from the three bad destinations, the hell realm, the ghostly realm, the animal realm, and probably in a lot of the deva worlds, even though there's the possibility, but because the pleasure is so long-lasting and so elevated, so that the beings in these heavenly worlds don't see the danger and seek a path to escape. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, so maybe then we'll call it a day. So we will end with the 3 half bows.